Hey YoProKnow audience. By now you've probably heard of our partner Flashpackerco, a company with a mission to help the growing number of global Flashpackers get the most out of their traveling adventures by sharing the products that have helped them be successful with both work and travel. While they're an e-commerce platform, they have some amazing blog posts that I'm ready to use on my next trip, and know you will too. Take, for example, the top 10 must-see sites in U.S. national parks. In true YoProKnow fashion, I can't miss out on sharing one of their work-related posts about the top 10 travel jobs in 2020. If this is an industry you might be interested in, or even if you're just a little curious, like I know I am, find Flashpacker in our bio and don't miss out on this information today. While you're there, be sure to use our code YoProKnow20 to get 20% off of your purchase. Hey there, everyone. It's Camber here with the YoProKnow. I'm here with Parus Nischal, who is the founder and CEO of Nischal Sports Group. He's 25 years old, currently living in Pittsburgh, and he's going to tell us all about his journey today. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great. Why don't you get started, Parus, by telling us just a brief background on you, and then we'll dive into more of the specifics.
Yeah, so very brief then. So I was born in England, grew up there. I was there for 17 years, and my family relocated to Pittsburgh when I was 17, so halfway through junior year of high school. And my background, if you look at the company, is obviously based in soccer. So I played soccer at a decent level in England with the aim of going pro there. Then when I relocated to the United States, the plan was to go pro through the college system here without knowing too much about it. And unfortunately, that ended through injury. And countless years later, I'm now where I'm at and working in the sport as well. So that's the brief one. I guess I'll leave the rest for the question.
That's perfect. What a recap there. So kind of walk us backwards. So you're the founder and CEO right now of the Nischal Sports Group.
Yep.
Walk us through the past couple of years and what your career path has looked like.
Yeah, so I graduated university in 2017. So we founded the Nischal Sports Group on May 22nd, 2018. And when I graduated school, I actually started working for KPMG in London. So I finished at University of Pittsburgh in 2017.
And you went back to
London for the job. And I was there for just about 5 months when I left and decided to start my business, which is, quite a difficult choice to do when you leave all that security behind, then kind of do something different with no stability. So that's kind of been the last 2 years. So I started the company in England, and then I've got another office in Pittsburgh now. So that's where we're at.
Great. What made you make that push to start this group?
So again, I'm trying to pack a lot as much as I can.
I'm sorry.
No, it's great. So as I mentioned before, I wanted to be a footballer. Soccer player my whole life. And I was lucky to get the opportunity to play at various, to trial at various academies in England, which is, the pipeline to the professional level. But there were always a few things that I may have been missing. And now obviously my background is, I'm Indian origin. So there's not many, a lot of minority players in the sport at the moment. So it's quite difficult coming up because there were not many people who looked like me playing the sport. And, also culturally, not necessarily geared towards, at the time, go to the gym or the workout life in a way. And various parts of that were kind of not really things that I had, or at least, it was kind of pushed. And, I had incredibly supportive parents. So when I wanted to be a footballer, they pushed me, and they tried to find the right things, to do, and always trying to, whether it's to work out or what we're supposed to do. The Rocky Balboa films, I used to watch all of them to get strong, and all those other things when I was told how to get stronger, and all those other things like that. And then when I moved to the States, the plan was to go pro through the college system, and again trying to understand that. But then unfortunately getting injured, I wanted to create an entity that I wish I had when I was like 13 years old, that would allow me to have all the access to what all the pros the pros are experiencing, and have that at an early age. So to build almost like a football education or a sports education early on, while representing the players that we have. So I wanted that full, complete guidance as part of the company to build that through. So when I was at KPMG, incredible experience there. But I think I always knew that I had to do something like this. And it was better to start it earlier than later, because you never know where we'll be in 10, 15 years if you waited a bit too long. So
right. That's really interesting. So one thing I think is very valuable, and it kind of ties back to the YoProKnow's name.
Yeah.
I call it the Yo Pro Know because I think Yo Pros, young professionals, are in the know a lot more than people give us credit for. And I think what's so interesting about your company is that you are, and about young entrepreneurs in general, is you're starting something for younger generations that older generations can't necessarily do because it's been so long since they were in your shoes. And so I think that's really, I'm just trying to make that connection. So obviously you've had this now for a couple of years. What have been some hardships for you along the way?
Oh, it's a few. I think largest obstacle slash issue I think that a lot of young professionals face is probably the patience aspect. And that's kind of quite a vague answer, but I think that's the biggest obstacle I think we face is we're used to having everything instantly, like convenience. So, building, so again, just to kind of recap what my company does, we scout, develop, and represent players. So we have a holistic approach to managing athletes, which encompasses data and sports science as well as representation. So we have multiple facets that are kind of moving parts. So building all of that is not going to happen in 2 years. And I think that's something that I've not struggled with. Obviously, over the last year has been much more understanding of the patience required. But I think that's one of the biggest, I guess, hardships would be. I mean, I'm quite lucky that I have a support network to fall back on. But that is the biggest, I think, issue with trying to go out on your own is the patience aspect, because you're going to have a lot of bumps in the road and you're not going to know everything. So, I mean, these are unfortunately cliched answers, but it really is the truth. It's really difficult when you have to be patient, especially now in the middle of a pandemic and things are slower than normal. It's the patience is the biggest rock that you have to just take, bide your time in.
Yeah. So, I ask that question a lot. That's actually my standard question to all young professionals, because I think hardship is just natural in the last, the first few years of your career. And then when people say that they don't have hardships, I don't believe them, because there's always going to be hardships. But I can relate to that wholeheartedly, just because, I mean, the Oprah No, it's a startup, and we're in the generation, we're the same age where we want things right away, and we're used to getting it that way. And so I feel that I feel very close to that point. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because again, a lot of people haven't. Talk more about your group and how many people are you working with? What does the day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so as I mentioned previously, so Nischal Sports Group, we represent developed footballers. I started it with partner Roy McMillan, who I've known for 20 odd years now, and which sounds funny because I'm only 25.
Right, your whole life.
And we have a sports scientist consultant, Lewis McMillan, and we have a functional strength coach, Chris Orantis, who's a core four at the moment. And essentially, Roy and Lewis are in the UK. I myself and Chris are in the US, and we've had had many people working with us. People like I'm going to mention the names properly. So, Ian Senyo has been our gold partnership manager as well, accepting the endorsements. We've had people for the last 2 years that have come in and helped, particularly intern as well. And the day-to-day is quite different every day. So our main goal is to ensure that the athletes are getting the right understanding of their bodies and nutrition, and as well as us looking after their data. So the data thing is quite vague, because it just depends on how many athletes videos we get in and what we can review. But essentially the main at the moment, it's usually talking to clubs, top clubs in different countries that are interested in our players, kind of keeping up with our players, see how they're doing, how they're coping mentally, particularly again this time. It's very, very difficult when there's no sport going on, and the players are expected to come and go from 0 to 100 back again, for no soccer during a pandemic to back to training again. And it's very difficult to keep everyone's hopes up. But right now it's pretty much mostly that. And it changes day to day. I mean, I could get a call in the middle of this chat and, something could go on and something could change. And it really does depend on the day. But most of the time, again, it's related to working with clubs, working with players, and also working with other entities that can help our players or help in the move for our players to move to teams. So.
Okay, great. And what does, I guess, size-wise, how many soccer players are you, football players are you usually working with?
Sure. So right now, I think on our website, which we have to update, so that's my bad on that part. So currently we have about 4 or 5 that we're working with fully, and then about 6 or 7 that we're working with that are under 18 that we're just trying to kind of work with and move forward. It's great. All the players we've got are brilliant. I mean, we're lucky to have found good quality players with the right mentality. In fact, also we're also in women's soccer as well, women's football. We just signed our first women's player about 10 weeks ago, and that's opened another avenue for us, because our initial plan was to have a few deals done by March for a few players. Ironically, on March 12th, which when everything shut down, we had a few things in place, and then everything was kind of, the plug was pulled, and the plan was to take our time getting into women's football, with our due diligence and research, but we kind of pivoted quite quickly during the pandemic, and I'm grateful for that. It's kind of,
that sounds like you have a good team that's supporting you, which is great.
Yeah. So the players, like I said, the players are, like family. So whatever you do with your, however you treat your family, you go treat players, and you get that back, which is great from us. So it's
wow, that's great. It's I was just listening to another podcast the other day about turning your passion into your business, and it's very clear just hearing you talk about your history and how you learned from your experience and you were able to take that and grow a business, which is really amazing. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you.
Because I'm not super familiar with this space, just the sports management space, what did it look like at the beginning for you? When did you become profitable? What did that process look like?
Well, still in that process. The very beginning, the first 3-4 months, again, I wanted initially, so when my first initial plan, so again, I bring up my background. We work with all and any player that needs our help, that we feel we can work with. But my specialty is in Indian origin players, because my background is Indian. And there's 1.3 billion of us, but we can't seem to get 11 good players on the field, it seems. To kind of build that culture of playing football. So initially that was my plan, and that space of, in the niche of Indian players, or players from the East, from Southeast Asia, it was a niche that I wanted to attack. But I felt like if I went to work for somebody else, that I wouldn't have the control of doing so, which sounds a bit crazy, because I was 23 at the time, so again, that's pretty privileged thing to think about. Like, I need the control at this age, when people work their whole lives in order to get that control. So I was lucky initially to kind of have the network, the base network, to start, what I was doing. And it's just, again, the first 6-7 months, we actually managed to get a player just before we formed the company. And then in that period, we're doing all the legal stuff, as well as trying to find the infrastructure. And so initially the way we work with players is we try to work with them. We try to test them first using Premier League level evaluation, which is some tests that they would do for the players at pre-season levels.
Okay.
Basically build the regime based on those tests on top of other parameters. So we were doing the testing for our first player, and Raj Khanna was the name of our first player, and poor kid went through a lot, because we were trying to build everything while trying to represent him and find clubs for him while building the background stuff. And it was very, very, very hectic, but within the first 6 or 7 months we were able to get him into a professional team, and which was really big for us. Unfortunately, wasn't able to continue due to personal reasons, but it was a big step for us. And then from there, that kind of first player success really kind of led us to getting a bit more notice in smaller levels, and then people started to come to us, and obviously I started to spread. Once you get that first person out the way, how to do it, you go from start to finish, you then kind of become a bit quicker, and you understand. Then you start to build your connections, and you have a relationship with teams that trust your judgment on player quality, and then you kind of go from there. And like I said, I'm quite lucky with the people that I've had around me that trust my judgment, kind of coming from almost nothing really, in terms of just kind of right out of international tax KPMG to just doing this again. So it was good. And then since then it's been good kind of level of trying to get the right players. Now we're looking at high level players now, in looking at players in the second division, first division in the UK, looking at players in Europe, and that's the plan right now. And we're getting there slowly. And like the big thing for us was with players of Southeast East Asian descent, or Indian descent, my biggest thing was the marketability of those players. What is it that we can do to help market? So again, that thing takes a bit of time, but we were able to get, for example, one of our main players, Jathan Bhabla, we were able to get him an endorsement with O'Neill's, which is a 102-year-old sports sports company out in Ireland. They've been around forever, and that was huge for him, huge for us, because the faith put in by a well-established company to put faith in an 18-year-old kid who's coming up in the game, who's already in Origin, who doesn't look like a lot of other footballers. And then for him, the kind of synergy met because they were interested in that market and breaking new barriers and stuff like that. So we're able to kind of do that that took us a while to kind of get going, but O'Neill's are brilliant, and other companies now we're working with to get the marketing side for players, because we see what players from different minorities or figures can do for an entire culture. Not just for that one country, for everybody. People can understand and see that in the same light. I mean, there's many examples, but it is a huge opportunity for young kids who look like myself, or kids who look like whoever, to look at a figure and go, wow, that once you see that, I mean, it's potentially a game changer, and if it's done properly, it can be really impactful.
Well, it sounds like there is never a dull day.
No.
It's really amazing I mean, this is, again, we were talking about this before the interview. This is why I started the Yo Pro No. It's to talk about all of the different career paths and the opportunities that are out there for you. There might be somebody who is out there who is working for a KPMG like company, or they're working somewhere where, we didn't even dive too much into it, but you obviously left that after 5 months because you had this other passion. And so I think there's a lot of people that can relate to this, whether they're in the sports world or not. So we talked about a lot today, Parus, and I really appreciate your time. One of my favorite parts about our interview today was, clearly seeing that passion, but your concept about patience, and that's something that a lot of people will relate to. So how can people find you?
Email, social media. We have our Instagram page is probably the most used by like my social media guys and myself. Obviously, email would be best. WhatsApp. We have to use WhatsApp all the time now. So, honestly, any way, anyone who's interested in getting in touch with me, I always have time for.
Great, and we'll make sure we link that across all the platforms. And I would be remiss not to ask you, what position do you play?
Oh, so I used to play right wing. I'm left-footed, but I used to play right wing or in the centre midfield.
Okay, very cool. I'm a footballer myself, or was, not anymore, but I was center mid for a long time. So played all growing up, and then thought I was going to take the college route, but ended up not doing that, and it worked out for the best.
Do you follow a team?
No, I know that's bad. I don't.
Honestly, it's better than saying
What should I follow?
Well, I don't know. You could decide. The current Premier League champions are pretty good, so I won't say the name, but you can have a look at that.
I guess I should probably do my research, but I didn't do my research before this. I should have. Well, Parus, thank you so much for your time today. We were so happy to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Awesome. Yeah, I just want to say I think it's extremely important to, I referenced my network and my sport network a couple of times. My mom, my dad, my sister Roshni, my brother Jivak, I mentioned my intern and people who work for me, but they have been my other staff and support network as well. So I just want to make sure it's important to recognize who's in your corner 24/7. So, again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.